Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder we have another unofficial patch notes from our main man Mike 10D. Now if you want links to anything that I talk about today, they will be in the description of the video. But basically the unofficial patch notes is looking at a few interesting vehicles and also some slight changes to existing ones. So here's the Reddit thread, it is on the front page of the War Thunder Reddit right now, and of course it links to a wonderful PDF. So, the first change that is in parts of the unofficial patch notes is the fact that the controls preset for iOS devices has been updated. So, if you do something on iOS with War Thunder, I don't know anything about that, then there you go. Hopefully that'll help out. The flight model changes have also come in. So the Focke-Wulf 190A5 is a Japanese premium and also a German standard tech tree aircraft. What's kind of interesting about the Japanese one, which I personally didn't know about, is the fact that it used the Focke-Wulf 190A-5/U2 flight model instead of just the standard A5 one. Now, the main difference between the two aircraft is the U2 version has less guns in it, therefore it is lighter, so therefore it should have slightly different characteristics. Now, I have no idea why the Japanese one had the U2 flight model in the first place, especially because it has all of the guns of the A5, unless it was somebody just cocking up a while ago when they put it in, or there is more nefarious things going on. But I highly doubt that. Generally, when it comes to this stuff, it's normally just a little cock-up. Moving on to the main part of this unofficial patch notes, there is new text for a new P-51. Now, we already have quite a few P-51s in game. We have the P-51A, which is a premium for the Americans and was a Thunder League reward, if you were around at that time. There is also the Mustang Mark 1A, which is in the British tree. You also have, of course, the P-51D series. We also have the P-51H, which is seen as the super prop Mustang, at least right now in game. And also the one I always forget, the A36, which just got itself some gun pods. And let's just say it's quite a lot of fun if you haven't tried them yet. They do a hell of a lot of damage, a lot of firepower behind them. Now, if we look at the changes, there's a file called the P-51 Mark 1. Now, this could pertain to a few things, especially in the next few lines. So, this is not the name for the P-51 in the US tree or the British tree, so that generally means that it is a new aircraft by itself. There is a damage model file that has this name that is not currently used, so something may be to be used in the future. And the flight model listed by the damage model is called the P-51B, and the model listed by the DM is shown below. So you can see the model there. And what is interesting about this idea, or this aircraft, is its guns. Now, if you want to look at the P-51B, which we will do, what you'll find is it had 4 50 cals on it. Now, if we look at the sprays for the guns on this damage model, there is definitely more than 4 guns. There is at least 6 that we can see, 2 nose-mounted and 4 on the wings. And this would actually set itself much up with the Mark 1 variant. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the P-51B, the C, and also the Mark 1 here for you. Just remember we have the Mustang Mark 1A already in game, which is the successor to the Mark 1, which we're going to look at. Today we're going to use the Mustangs website, which is a wonderful name, and it basically has everything Mustang that you would ever want when it comes to the World War II aircraft. Once again, link in the description for you. So, the Mustang Mark 1 was the first Mustangs which the RAF got from the Americans. They were seen as the first batch of Mustang 1s were NA-73, which were same as the XP-51s, which are known as the prototypes of the Mustangs, and they used the original power plant, which was the Allison V171039, and it kept the first production aircraft, the AG-345, for testing and squawk fixing, and the RAF received the first Mustang 1s in October 1941, which unfortunately were behind schedule, and they also lost some in shipping or transport, which is something that you kind of got to accept when it comes to World War II. Many nations lost a lot of vehicles during transport. If you want to see some absolutely just ridiculous numbers, go and look at some of the Lend-Lease stuff being sent to the Soviets, and you'll realize how many were lost just trying to get to the USSR, not even fighting. Now, what is interesting about this Mustang in general is that it was seen to be faster than the Spitfire of the time, about 30 miles per hour, and maybe on top of that, which is a bit more useful, is the fact that it had double the range. So that means that its fuel, its fuel life of the aircraft would take it double the distance of what a Spitfire could. Now, generally at this point in the war, we're talking about 1941, the Bomber Command of RAF was doing day raids, but it was mainly focused on night raids at the time. And then as going forward in the war, that increased to even more ideas, but they were mainly focused on hitting places in areas near Scandinavia or in Scandinavia, and also areas in France, and also sometimes in Germany, trying to hit production, and also resource facilities and things like that. So overall, the Mustang may have not made that much of a difference when it came to actually defending the bombers, but it still was seen as an aircraft faster than the Spitfire, which would help out in certain ways. So the AG348, it was the last Mustang with the short nose intake. Now if we have a look at this model here, it kind of looks like it has the short nose intake, which would be, around this area up here. And also there were problems with induction during high angles of attack, and NAA extended the nose intake right up to the spinner. And then the AG348 also was the end of any hand-tooled parts. The production line was in business, so they started printing these things wholesale instead of trying to put them together piece by piece. And then in December of 1940, the RAF had added to their initial order with another 300 aircraft still called the Mustang 1, and the new NAA designation was NA83. The main improvements found in the exhaust stacks design. The new stacks were flared from top to bottom versus the more streamlined initial version. Now, since we have only the damage model to look at, we can't really tell if that's the case. Basically, you're looking at this area here, and there isn't really a lot to look at. For me, if I was going to make a judgment on it, I would say it is the NA73 and not the NA83, so the first production version of the Mustang which the RAF got. Now, what pertains this aircraft for me to believe that it's a Mustang 1 instead of a P-51B that it's labeled as is the armament on it. So you'll see here, the guns on it were 250 cals and 430 cals. Now this fits other aircraft that we've seen, such as the P-36s, where you have 30s in the wings and then 50s in the center. To me, that seems to be what this aircraft is, just because of the armament on it. So what we might see is the first RAF version of the Mustang instead of just the Mustang Mark 1A, which would be very cool. And obviously it has the British skin on it, which is lovely as well. So let's go into the P-51B, and by the way, because a lot of people have been talking about it, there's a hell of a lot of variants of the P-51. You have the prototypes, so the XP-51s, the RAF ones, Mustang Mark 1 to 4, and then there are iterations between those, as we've just seen. You have the A variants, which we do have in game, the B variants, which we'll look at now, the C variants, which was done at the same time as the B, and then we have the D, which is obviously the one we have in game, the H, which is already also in game, and then the K version, which is something that I'm sure we'll see in the future. If the Americans or the Mustangs in general are not all put into the game, I would say it would be a travesty. But luckily, my camera is still working, and also on top of that, I think eventually they'll all make it into the game in one way or another. I would love to see 4 US British Mustangs. The 1, 2, 3 and 4 would be absolutely glorious, and then you got the 1A as well, which would be nice. So let's look at what the B variant is of the P-51B. Now for me, the B variant would be in the RAF tree, and the US variant of this would be the C, and we'll go through why. So the P-51 was seen with the P-51A that it needed a more powerful engine. Very much one of the key things as you go through the P-51s and the different iterations, what is always wanted is a more powerful engine. And with the B, it got one. With the P-51B and C, these retrofits first flew in October for the RAF and November for the US AAF. So the B variant flew for the RAF and the C for the US AAF. So you can see there's already a difference there in what trees that they may go in. There was 400 P-51B-1NAs, which had been placed months before successful test flights, and this is probably on the fact of the A36, P-51A, and the XP-51s, and also the Mustangs doing very well in World War II, wanting more of these aircraft. So, as I said, the main difference between this and earlier ones was the engine itself. They both had Rolls-Royce Merlin 61 V16503, and this had more than 490 horsepower as the Allison V1710 at 25,000 feet. So this is seen as a much more powerful engine compared to its predecessor. And the other things that they added to the P-51B was it could carry more ordnance, so that might be something that we see in the game. One of the issues with the Mustang Mark 1A is the lack of secondary armament, and something like a P-51B being able to carry 1,000 pounds under each wing would definitely mean that it could put a dent in ground forces. It also means that people will ground pound it with it in air realistic, but then again, people already do that with stuff like the Wyvern, so you should be used to it by now. There was no nose-mounted guns, which were present on the Mustang 1, as we saw earlier, because of the size of the engine, pretty much. And it also had a redesigned belly scoop, of all things. There were also other changes. The firewall was brought forward to accommodate the new engine, mainly just trying to fit it in. And the Merlin used an updraft induction system, so the intake was moved below the spinner, and an intake trunk installed behind the cowlings. So, as I said, most of these changes are done to accommodate the engine, and then once the engine is accommodated, what that basically meant is they were able to add extra ordnance onto it, which is always good. There is also other changes to it, but the first P-51B exited the assembly line and flew in May 1943, and the P-51C model flew 3 months later. So in search of even more range, they added a larger fuselage tank for the gas, so 85 gallons on top of that. It was installed behind the pilot seat, so in-game that would probably make it incredibly heavy, but then again, the engine should be able to accommodate. And this began with the P-51B-7NA and the P-51C-3NT. So as I said, the way to see these two aircraft is that they are very similar, and the only real difference is one was created for the intent of being used by the US AAF, and the other one had the intent of being used by the RAF. The P-51B was built at the Inglewood plant, and the P-51C line was built at the Dallas plant. If we look at the general characteristics of these two aircraft, they are incredibly similar. You have 450 cows, you have very similar, or at least the same engines if you want to see that. Generally the same ordnance, apart from maybe slightly different depending on what the country's prerogatives were, but overall they're pretty much the same. So when it says a P-51B in a file, you should also see a file which is to do with the P-51C, since both nations should be getting this aircraft. Hopefully standard tree, very much similar to like the Sherman II, which you would find in the British ground tree, which isn't a premium. Now, also, you have the Razorback Merlin Mustangs, the P-51B and C. Something that we don't have in game is any Razorbacks when it comes to P-47s. A lot of people have been asking for these for a long time, and I think it would be a great addition. The main reason for it is because finally we could update the model of the German one, which should be a Razorback. But yeah, P-51B and C, you can see some stats here. They had a weight quite heavy when they were full, 11,800 pounds, about 7,000 when they were empty. max speed of 439 miles per hour, incredibly quick for the time. And then you had, of course, the 450 cals, so very similar to the P-51A that we have in game. Completely different to the Mustang Mark 1A, which had the 20s, and of course the Mustang Mark 1, which I believe is this machine, since it has the 250s and obviously 430s when we look at the wings. Now, why is this important, you may ask? Why is this important in the grand scheme of things? Well, in what Mike 10D believes, and I will say this is his opinion, as he says here, he has no evidence for this, and obviously neither do I, but he says, my guess is that the plane will be in the US tree with a reskin. The DM, FM, and model are all much older than the text line and will be an Xbox exclusive. And then there is also an Xbox exclusive for the XM1, as we know about. There was a dev blog about it. The ship, the USS Bennion DD-662, and it would make sense to have a P-51 as the Xbox exclusive plane. So let's say this is a Xbox exclusive plane. First of all, if it was, it would be incredibly weird being a Mustang Mark 1 being in the American tree. And if it is, then I would be kind of gobsmacked. I think this would fit much better in the British tree. But then again, as if you watch my XM1 video about why the XM1 exists, you will know that the major player base on Xbox One is located in America. The amount of units sold in America just outclasses everywhere in the world and is even much more combined than the rest of the world, maybe even double the size. So giving them an American premium would make sense in the grand scheme of things. If it's a British premium, that would also... Sorry about that, be nice, but overall I can see this being in the American tree, even if historically it definitely wasn't. This was an RAF plane through and through, which is why you see it's camouflage like that. I think it would be much better making this aircraft, the Mustang Mark 1, either a premium for the British or a standard tech tree. I'd personally like to see it a standard tech tree, since we already have a premium Mustang in the Mark 1A, and then you have the P-51B and C, which can be your exclusives for Xbox One, mainly the C, which is the American variant, that can be your premium, and then the B can be the premium for the British, which are pretty much reskins of each other. So that's how I would do it, especially while looking at the research that I've personally done, and also just thinking about it holistically on how it should work. Now, with all that said, something that a lot of people brought up when it came to the XM1 was the collector's issue. The fact that if you have an exclusive vehicle which does not appear on a certain platform, collectors are going to be annoyed. And as I said in the video that I made, it wasn't the main point that I talked about, but it was one that I brought up, which I think is incredibly important. The fact is that you are going to have exclusive vehicles when it comes to separate platforms, but as we saw with the PS4, if it is a vehicle which is either rank 3, rank 4, even rank 2, which is an exclusive, then a few years down the line, it could become a gift vehicle for another platform once that exclusivity idea has disappeared. We saw this with the A26. The A26 was an exclusive aircraft for a very long time for the PS4, and then we got it on the PC side as an event vehicle. Now, I believe it is the same one. If it isn't the same one, please correct me, but even if it isn't the same one, it is incredibly similar when it comes to it. So if a machine like this turns out to be an exclusive for the Xbox, I think this is much easier for the on the collectors, because from a collector's point of view, you can definitely see this aircraft being part of an event a few years down the line, meaning that it will lose its exclusivity, just like the A26 did. With the XM1, that is not as easy to see, because you can't see Gaijin giving away in an event sense an XM1 unless they do it in a tournament setting, which is just not a good setting to do it in. If we talk about the festive events or the War Thunder Chronicles, then the XM1 can go nowhere near it, since we've never had a vehicle at that BR which has been given away in that sense. So instead, if you put something like this in a War Thunder Chronicles event or a festive event, it makes a hell of a lot more sense. It fits, especially when you compare it to what we just got last time, the Tandem Mai and the Whirlwind. That completely fits those type of vehicles in the form of this Mustang. So hopefully the collectors will be less annoyed by it. I still feel your pain, but at least there is a chance down the line that it may come to PC if it is an Xbox exclusive. On top of this, it doesn't have the ability to annihilate the meta. One of the biggest issues that I have with the XM1 is the fact that I can see it just screwing up top tier meta for at least a month, with a ton of people buying it, only having it and nothing else, being new to the game. Even if they're from PC onto Xbox, they're still going to have very low crews, they're still going to have a lot of these disadvantages, but they're going to have a full rank 5 premium, which there's no way it gets under 8.7. Like, after doing a ton of research on it, I can't see it even being lower than the MBT. So we're talking about a 9093, but at the lowest point, it's going to be an 8.7. So that's just going to screw up top tier matchmaking. It's going to make the Abrams look like ass, because the Abrams is going to lose a hell of a lot, and the counterbalancing there is just not going to work. So yeah, that is something to think about. But with something like this, it isn't going to be at the top echelons of the game. It isn't going to be shafting a bunch of, very experienced players who are playing at those top echelons. Instead, it's going to be a much easier beginning for the majority of people who start playing on Xbox. So that is at least a nice thing coming out of this, at least compared to the XM1 variant. Now, let's have a look at the USS Bennion DD-662. Now, I didn't know a lot about this vehicle, but I've done some preliminary research, and this is what it looks like, and these are some statistics. So it's a Fletcher-class destroyer. It's a US destroyer as well. It basically has a speed of 38 knots, a decent range, and also a crew of 273. The main thing that comes out in my mind is it has 5.5 inches, 10 40mm, 7 20s, and 10 21 inches. So it has a lot of secondary guns on this, and if you actually look at the picture here, you can kind of see them all spotted around the place in these little towers. So this is a heavily armed Fletcher-class destroyer, but it's not really any different compared to the other Fletcher classes we've seen. So this seems to be a machine which, if it is an exclusive, once again, for a collector, it's going to be annoying as hell, but for everybody else, I'm pretty sure it's not going to annihilate the meta. This is not going to be a top-tier machine, and also with Naval not coming out yet, then obviously we don't know what the meta is going to be shaped like. We don't know what even the BRs. We only really know what the trees are when it comes to these vehicles and what's going on. I discussed in the last unofficial patch notes that there seemed to be rank 1 and 2 was PT boats dominated, rank 3 was destroyers, and rank 4 was cruisers. So if this is a rank 3 premium, an exclusive one, that, in my opinion, would be okay. It's not going to annihilate top tier meta, and it's going to be sitting in a place where people will be happy with their purchase, because they'll be able to grind out the rank 1, 2, and 3s and 4s, in a good research rate. But at the same time, it shouldn't cock up high tier battles. Now, the issue is, as I said, the caveat, we don't know the BRs of any of these machines. We don't know how they're going to work together. A lot of the testing has put the PT boats, destroyers, and cruisers, light cruisers I should say, all on the same battlefield. Whether you agree with that or not, I personally don't. I still think the PT boats do not have any advantages over any of these ships. But yeah, overall, I think it's a decent pick. It's basically just a copy of something we are going to see in game, and as an exclusivity point, I think it's a nice little premium to throw at people if they want to get used to ground forces and get into it. But the main takeaway from this is, of course, the Mustang and how it is going to fit. If it's just a British premium in the form of a Mark 1, I'll be disappointed that it's premium, but it would be nice to see. Same idea with the P-51B. If this just comes out as a US Tech Tree P-51 Mark 1, I'm going to be livid. If it's a P-51C, I'll be alright with it. So yeah, that's pretty much where I stand on the whole thing. Overall, definitely interesting to think about. Hopefully we'll see some kind of dev blog on these P-51s at some point, even if, you know, they're not coming in this update, they may come in a later one. We'll have to have a think. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.